Imagine standing in front of a courtroom filled with men in wigs, uniforms, and disgusted stares. The air smells of salt and sweat. And you, a woman, stand accused of piracy. What chance did you ever have in a place where even the laws were written by men who believed you should never have held the sword, never commanded a ship, and never defied them? History's answer is brutal. Almost none. Captured female pirates rarely walked away free. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the Golden Age of Piracy was not just about treasure and adventure. It was about rebellion, survival, and the question of power. And when women challenged that power, the system made sure the punishment was unforgettable. These trials were nothing like the fair courts we imagine today. They were often held in humid makeshift rooms in colonies like Jamaica, Nassau, or New Providence. The judges were naval officers, men of the crown who already knew the verdict before the trial began. Not all punishments were public. Some were quiet, hidden from the world, and far more terrifying. Captured women were often sold into forced labor in the colonies. In Spanish and Portuguese records, there are names of women listed as spoils of war. They were sent to plantations in the Caribbean, or to coastal towns where they worked as servants for the same people who had captured them. Their lives ended not on a gallows, but in silence, buried under years of servitude. Others were confined to prison hulks. These were old, rotting warships turned into floating prisons. They were anchored near ports like Port Royal and Portsmouth. The conditions were horrific, dark, damp, and crawling with disease. The air was thick with the smell of salt, sweat, and death. Men and women were chained below deck, starving and forgotten. Many died within weeks. Their bodies were tossed into the sea, their names never recorded again. This was the quiet erasure of history. No witnesses, no legends, just silence. There were no lawyers for the accused, no defense, no hope. The courtroom would fill with sailors and officers testifying against the pirates. Some lied to save their own lives. Others simply repeated what the British Navy wanted to hear. And there, standing in front of them all, would be women who had terrified men at sea. Women who had fought, looted, and commanded ships like equals. Now reduced to criminals waiting for a sentence they already knew. Two names still echo through time: Bonny and Mary Read. Their trial in 1720 remains one of the most famous in history. Bonny was fierce, bold, and unapologetic. Mary Read was calm, clever, and fearless. When they stood before the court in Spanish town Jamaica, the world seemed ready to erase them. When Calico Jack, their captain and Bonny's lover, was sentenced to death, Anne didn't weep. She looked at him and said, "If you had fought like a man, you wouldn't hang like one." That line, cold and defiant, turned her into a legend. But even legends have limits. Their last hope was something called pleading the belly, a desperate claim of pregnancy that could delay execution. The court, forced by law, would examine them to confirm. If found pregnant, the execution would be postponed until after birth. Some women escaped during that time. Others didn't survive childbirth. For most, it was just a pause before the inevitable. London's execution dock stood as a warning to every pirate across the seas. A long wooden platform stretched into the River Thames. Here, hundreds met their fate. The British Empire believed that each hanging was a symbol of law and order. But for the people who watched, it was a dark spectacle, a mix of justice and entertainment. Crowds lined the streets from Newgate Prison all the way to the dock. They cheered, and sometimes cried as pirates were paraded through. The prisoners would wear plain clothes, their hands tied, their faces pale from weeks of confinement. For women, the humiliation was worse. They were mocked not only for being criminals, but for being women who dared to fight. Under the 1698 Piracy Act, death was mandatory for anyone found guilty. The judge would recite the same line every time: "You shall be hanged by the neck until you are dead, and may God have mercy on your soul. There was no mercy. Not for men, and certainly not for women. The sea that once gave them freedom now became their silent witness. The waves carried away the echo of their names, and history buried them beneath the noise of empire. Before the gallows, there was the whip. Public floggings were common. Using the cat o' nine tails, a whip designed for pain, the authorities delivered punishment in front of watching crowds. It wasn't just about hurting the body. It was about breaking the spirit. For women, the spectacle was crueler. The punishment was turned into humiliation. Crowds shouted, laughed, and threw things as they were tied to wooden posts. The message was clear. No woman would ever challenge male authority again. The British Empire used fear as a weapon. Every lash, every hanging, every trial was designed to remind people who controlled the oceans. And yet, even in that pain, some refused to cry. They stood silent, their eyes fixed on the horizon, as if they still belonged to the sea. It wasn't justice. It was control. Pain was turned into a lesson, and rebellion was turned into theater. The fate of female pirates tells us more about society than about crime. It shows how deeply the world feared women who stepped outside their roles. These women had done what men were praised for. They fought battles, commanded ships, and lived free. But because they were women, their courage was rewritten as chaos. Every trial, every execution, every forgotten name was a warning. It told the next generation that rebellion had a price. And yet, their stories survived. Bonny, Mary Read, and dozens of unnamed women became symbols of defiance. They didn't just fight for treasure. They fought for the right to exist beyond the rules written for them. Even today, their stories echo through time. In the creak of wooden ships, in the whisper of waves against the shore, and in every woman who refuses to stay silent. History tried to bury them, but the sea remembers. So the next time you hear about pirates, remember this. They weren't all men, and not all of them were villains. Some were women who challenged an empire, and for that, they paid the ultimate price. If this story made you rethink what justice meant at sea, tell us in the comments. Do you believe Bonny and Mary Read were criminals, or victims of a world that refused to see their courage? And if you want more forgotten stories like this one, make sure you're subscribed, because history still hides many secrets, and the next one will change how you see the past forever.